Hello. In the first episode of Africa Inside Out, we explore the world's perception of Africa and Africans and its impact on all of us. In this episode, we explore the African diaspora and its enormous impact on families and communities in Africa. Unlike any time in the past, members of the African diaspora today are faced with challenges, difficult decisions, and opportunities. We continue our conversation with Amini Kajunjo, the President and CEO of the Africa America Institute. We explore the new face of the African diaspora, the harsh economic realities, the potential for human and economic investment, and our vision for a new relationship with Mother Africa. First of all, thank you for having us. It's a privilege to be here. So you are the first woman to be the CEO of the African American Institute. African woman.
Yeah, the first African.
So
woman.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Considering the resources the African continent have, do you see foreign investment as a form of exploitation? And what are the benefits of it?
It's a really good question. I don't think it's a form of exploitation. I think it can be exploitive if literally you allow a multinational to come in and, let's say in the case of Congo, take all the cobalt out of the country, ship it wherever it needs to go, and there's really nothing left for the community.
Right.
I think when governments and private sector structure these investments in such a way that you are able to collect taxes, you are able to collect fees and other monies to then turn around and use that for the economic development of the country, then it's not exploitive. It's an opportunity for us to improve our living standards. Unfortunately, though, we see too many instances in which these foreign investments don't end up benefiting the average person and only benefit the elites of the country, and that's really unfortunate. And I think as those of us in the diaspora and those of us on the ground have to stand up when we see and hear of things like this.
How do you think the returning diaspora can address this and make the local people benefit from the same resources that is coming from the same land where they were born?
Most people in the diaspora, when they go back home, they think about private sector only. They think about going into private, and that's important. I don't want to minimize that. But I think many of us need to think about going into public sector and really serving our country in that way. Because I think, when governments work properly, then the private sector can really flourish. The diaspora definitely needs to look at returning back home and serving in the public sector, and changing some of these policies and making sure that the resources that we have on the ground benefit the average person.
Africa is a continent that has a reputation of asking for aid to fight poverty, hunger, and disease. There have been many international aid initiatives directed toward Africa, and yet these problems remain stubbornly intact. However, recent studies have shown that contributions from the diaspora back to their loved ones in their native countries have far more impact in eradicating poverty than international aid. Remittances are far more likely to meet the need of those receiving the money, whether it's for food, housing, medicine, or small business, and in a time frame that is realistic. What have been the effect of the continuing diaspora on the people of the African continent, you think?
The fact that African people have been all over the world, and many of us aren't living on the continent, many people have seen that as a bad thing. And we used to call it brain drain, and that our best minds are leaving the continent. And it doesn't matter whether they left 100 years ago, 200 years ago, or yesterday, that we're losing some of our best minds, and that the continent is not where it needs to be because its best minds are outside of the continent.
Right.
But now people are talking about brain circulation. They're talking about this notion that, yes, some of us leave the continent, and nowadays we're leaving the continent to seek education, and as it was in the past too. And then when you think about how people are changing the continent through their pocketbook, especially when you think about remittances, and $60 billion a year is being sent by the diaspora to the African continent, and it's higher than most foreign aid budgets of any country. So when you start to look at that, it starts to tell you that yes, people are leaving the continent, and many are doing well outside of the continent, but they're sending money back, and that's pretty important. And if we can figure out a way to use that money for development, that even makes it better. Now, and I don't want to undermine the fact that sending money to a mother or a sister or a cousin for school, for medical care, these are very important activities, and we cannot undermine that. But imagine if we can also use some of that money to funnel it into infrastructure investment in education for a wider member of the society, and also for healthcare. I mean, there's so much that we can do.
In 2010, Africans remitted nearly $52 billion through official channels. In the same time period, the World Bank estimates official development assistance to be $43 billion. Africans face costly challenges sending money that is vital for their family survival, seeing up to 12% of the money eaten by banking fees. According to the World Bank, of the most expensive countries in the world to send money to, all of the top 5 are in Africa. The World Bank also estimated that if the cost of sending money was reduced by a modest amount, it would add another $16 billion in dispersed funds. Often, the diaspora relies on local or informal channels to send money to their families. It is estimated that 75% of remittances to Africa are through local or informal channels. From this figure, it will put remittances from the diaspora at nearly $200 billion. We reached out to people who were willing to share their thoughts and experiences sending money to their families in Africa. To explore the human side of remittances, we asked questions that were both general and personal. Their views were informative and sometimes surprising. Of the people that you know right now in the diaspora, how many of them send money home?
Of the people that I know from Africa, everybody that I know from Africa send money back home. And I think the money that they're sending home contribute a lot on the development of the country, and on top of that, with the international aid, that's what make our country to survive. But everybody that I know, from America, all African from America, Europe, they are sending money back home to support relatives and family and friends.
Of the people that you know, African people, how many send money home, you think?
Everybody, I think. Everybody sends some money back home, either a lot or a little, but the discussion that I have with my friends, everybody send money home.
Of the people you know, Africans here in the diaspora, how many do you think send money home?
It would be better to ask how many don't send money home. The majority of people send money home. The majority, I'd say about a good 90%, 80 to 90% of the people that are here send money home.
What do you think about the money that the African diaspora send home? Like the money we send home?
It's beneficial for our family because we have family back home. So we just want to provide for the family. So it's beneficial for us and the family.
Of the African people you know here, how many do you know? Do you think send money home?
As an African who live in the U.S., I believe every individual here who is an African descent send money back home.
Is it sometimes difficult to find the money to send home?
Then yes. Sometimes it can be very, very difficult. Life is not easy, and life is not cheap over here. Yeah, it can be difficult at times, but we have to remind ourselves that we're in an advantage in comparison to many others. So do what you can.
I will say yes. It's really really difficult because most of the people are working like two jobs. They have like a full-time job and a part-time job. I remember back in the day when I get here around 2000. I was going to school and working two jobs, working in a restaurant and working in factories, so I can send money back home. It's actually it wasn't like, okay, my parents was asking me to send the money, but it was something like I was feeling like I have the obligation to do it, with everything they have done for me. It was an obligation.
Is it hard though to find this money to send home, knowing how difficult it is here, also going to school and working at the same time? How do you balance that?
I mean, it's very hard, I'm not gonna lie, because I feel like I'm working for two people.
Yes, it's hard. It's not hard. It's not hard in a sense that if you have a job, you can able to make maybe a living wage. For some of us who are here legally, working, paying our taxes and all that stuff, we can send this money back home.
Is it hard sometimes to get that money to send home?
Yeah, it is very hard. You have to work hard to get the money. 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and go to school is very hard.
How does it affect our lives here in the United States?
It's affect our life in a way like we have to work harder. We have to make sure that whatever we're doing, we have to do it right. So to make sure that at the end of the month, we have like extra money to send back home. Because at the end of the month, if you don't have that money, you feel like you fell, because people are waiting for that money, to survive. People are waiting for that money to pay bills the same way like we have to pay bills here. Exactly. So that has a big impact.
So their survival depend on the money that is being sent basically from here.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Do you think this money helps, and why do you think this money is sent home?
It's sent home because, let's say, if you are from, I'm not saying a poor family, but a family whereby it's difficult to make ends meet, and you are lucky ones to be here, I believe the money you send here help those people back home. It does.
What do you think are some of the reasons this money is sent?
The first reason is I will say we have the obligation to do it because the way that we were raised and with our culture, it's not like even if your parents, they have money, you have to send back money to show them, okay, now you guys did enough for me. Now I have to show you, I have to do a little bit for you as well.
It's for school finance, for living. Actually, there's a lot of reason why we sending money back home. So myself, I really don't ask a lot of questions what they do with the money, but I know what I do is like for their living, to improve their living, because there's a lot of poor people back home and not everybody getting to work.
What do you think are some of the reasons money is sent home?
Some of the reasons could be just from basic needs to supporting your family, to supporting those that are back home, to helping others who don't have that same advantage, that could use a leg up. in starting a small business, and that want that growth. So a few $1,000s eventually summed up can have the same effect, if not way more, over there than over here, in the sense of starting a business and having that business grow.
Even though if I would say open business, like send money, and if you have a family member there, that is not working and that depend on you all the time, like open a small business for that person, probably will help the person provide for himself if the person is very serious about what he like about himself and want to go up and change his life status, and it will help the person for himself and not depend on nobody, just be independent for himself, and it will help you too. You don't have to send money back home every day or every month for the person.
Will you tell us on an average how much money you send home on a monthly basis?
Monthly basis, I will say it depends. Myself, yes, I will say at least $200. It can be more sometime, because if I have an emergency from friends and family that asking me if I can help them, I have to do the same. But the monthly basis, I will say $200 at least every month.
Are you willing to tell us on an average how much money do you send home on a monthly basis?
It depends. I don't have any amount, any specific amount that I say I'm sending back home every. It depends on the need.
Approximately how much money do you send home, let's say on a monthly basis?
On a monthly basis, depend what I got. So sometimes I send up to $300, $500 a month. Yeah.
According to the World Bank, the most expensive countries to send money to, all top 5 are in Africa. Why do you think that is?
You said all top 5
Yep.
are in Africa. Yeah, I think.
Why are we charged more to send money to Africa if we are perceived as the poorest continent in the world?
I mean, I don't know that much, but I think it's to get rich, you gotta step on the poorest people, That's how the world is built, To get up there, you gotta use the poor people.
I don't think there's a good enough reason to explain why we're charged more than anywhere else, when there's so many of us that are wiring money. Example, in the DC area, I know that the Ethiopian community is huge. It's large. DC, Maryland, Virginia, and the amount of aid, or the amount of people that send money to their families via Western Union, via all these money transfer companies, I believe everyone is charged way more than than they can afford, or than they need to be charged.
You cannot always relate to people going back home and give them money. Sometimes, if you have an emergency, you cannot see no one traveling from home, to home. So you have to go through the bank, Western Union, MoneyGram, or things like that. And I think that's most of the people what they do. But, we have to pay. Unfortunately, we have to pay those fees. I don't know what we can do, but,
The system itself is structured in a way that it depends mostly on the poor people.
What means you use? Do you use, for instance, Western Union, or you use local channels, such as other Africans that send money home?
I use local. never.
Why is that?
Because I think them of they're like local, they get the U.S. dollars. Actually, Western Union is like they change the money into the money up there, and I think the balance is kind of little bit. We can't afford to lose no money, you know.
I will ask you another question. Where it came about traveling to Europe or traveling to Africa is 8 hours from here to Africa, 8 hours from here to Europe. You will find a ticket for Europe for $400, and for Africa they will charge you $1,500. I don't know why. Even talking about phone cards. Getting a $5 phone card calling my family, getting a $5 phone card calling Europe, I have like, so this is
Like
that's
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
I can't even give you an answer why, you know, but it's something that we have to review, definitely. I don't know why.
Why do you think international aid have failed to eradicate poverty in Africa?
My personal opinion is it is there to pretty much make Africa dependent on it, in the sense of placing it, installing it in all the separate countries, to the degree that we've become so dependent on it that we have to it just almost becomes a reflex, a reaction to just always asking for the aid, instead of becoming, you know, we have the resources, we have everything for the growth, but I don't think it was there to eradicate from the very beginning.
I don't think they really they fail, but they still helping, but they cannot help us as, you know, as they can, because it's not really their country, you know, it's just their former colonies. But I think the help are supposed to come also from us, you know, but it's totally different how we can help ourselves if our resources have to go outside the country.
Why do you think international aid have failed to eliminate poverty in Africa?
Yeah, I think I answered that earlier, but as I said, you know, they're not giving us what we really need. You know, I think we get in the minimum, and it's not about the aids. They just need to teach us how to, you know, how to provide ourselves. You know, as I said, before you give me a fish every day, show me how to fish. It's simple, you know.
Every fund that is sent here to tackle poverty in Africa is being shared among the powerful people there, forgotten the poor, ignoring the poor people. So therefore, it's difficult to combat poverty.
What do you think of the traditional foreign assistance? Do you think it help, and who benefit?
The foreign assistant help, but it doesn't help really the individual people. So the reason why I say that is like they giving it to the government, but some of the country, the African country, their government are corrupted. So it's not getting to the right people, you know. But if you or I we send money in Africa, we are sure that the money is, you know, will get to the right people, will get to our family or relative.
Who do you think benefit from international aid?
The major ones that benefit from the aid are those that are giving the aid. You have to submit to whoever is giving you the aid, you know, and Eventually, the person that's giving you the aid will choose how you think, who runs the country, etc., and etc. You know, and if you become too dependent on it, and eventually, if one of the leaders decides, no, you know, this is not what I want. This is not what is, you know, what is best for my people. You know, what's the first thing they do? They cut the aid.
Say if I send money straight to my family, the people who benefit is my immediate family. They benefit, they can use it, you know, to implement it on what is needed for that project. On the other hand, if the money is sent by the international community to the government there or whatever it is, which is to be sent in the community, it might not reach to that community. That's the implication. On the other hand, if I send money directly, that money can be used directly because it's used for that purpose, for that project.
Who you think benefit from international aid?
Most likely the government.
When you have a disaster or an emergency, I know the international aid are always there, but if they gave money to the country, probably my parents, they won't get into that money, you know.
With all the natural resources that Africa have, do we really need international aid?
I don't believe that we do. An example is our prime minister, who recently passed away, Medles, was a visionary, and he pointed something out that was very important. And it wasn't only in the sense of speaking for Ethiopia, he was speaking for the rest of Africa. He said, despite us being very, very poor, we are here to show that we are very capable. So we have the resources to do everything, you know, on top of the resources, we have the labor, you know. We also have the passion, you know. African to African, you've seen how we're passionate about everything, about building and growth. And I don't believe that we need it.
We still need international aid because we have the resources, but we don't know how to use them. We don't know how to use them. We don't have the industries. We don't have the people that are trained to show us. We don't have nothing in our country. Everything is going outside Africa and coming back to Africa.
We have to stand up for ourselves and then develop our own country. We cannot depend on the international aid in the first of all to come to Africa. We Africans have to, you know, stand up, you know, man up. Let me use that word, man up, and then do what is best for us, because you don't depend on nobody to come and help you in your household.
Africa is known for international monetary aid. Do you think with all the natural resources that Africa have, does Africa really need international aid?
I think the whole world need each other. It's not just Africa or Western countries. I think we all need to work together to improve the world.
For most Africans, the distinction between family and community is blurred. Personal responsibility and family duty extend beyond the understanding of many Western observers. The stigma of Africans perceived as endlessly needy and incapable of caring for their own is at odds with the reality of remittances, and it can be measured in dollars. What cannot be measured is the sacrifice, hard work, and isolation that come from leaving home and loved ones to find the means to provide for our families. I'm Abdullah Jallo. Thank you for joining us on Africa Inside Out.